For this assignment, we are going to create a floating tabs icon menu. And what it should look like in the presentation mode is you're going to have some icons here. When I scroll down the page, the icons move with the scroll. So meaning this is a sticky menu. It doesn't get lost up in the top once I scroll down. It kind of scrolls with you. The other thing is icons should be hovering. The last thing is when upon at least one icon click, there's going to be a jump to a different location, and then I should be able to return back with other icons. So those are the different things that we're going to be covering. Your assignment might require a few extra things, but at least for this video, you'll learn how to create something sticky. We'll reinforce the hover states and then how to jump back to other locations. Okay, we're going to start off in Figma, and one of the first things we're going to do is we are going to create a new design. Remember, when we first open up our design, we do have to insert a frame, which is what we're going to be working on. Remember, frames are more like artboards, so you can have several of those. So we're going to click on frame. We are going to change to desktop and then MacBook Air. So it will create automatically the height and width, the width and height of what it should look like. Then you can kind of zoom out a little bit. We can also zoom back in depending on what's fitting. So let's say, for example, I want to have another frame. The reason why I have two frames right now is for just the simple purpose of I needed a second frame here, and I want to make sure I move this out of the way so it's not touching my first frame. So I created this second frame, and when you create a frame, be careful of where you create them. So for example, I'm going to create here and then make sure that the frame is kind of on top level. And the reason being for that is with a frame versus a section, I can actually do a layout grid and add my grid on here. This is very helpful, especially if I am working on things like icon design. Right? And so for this assignment, we can go ahead and just start designing and creating inside of Figma whatever icons that you like. Now, if you'd prefer to create them in Illustrator and import them in, you are definitely always welcome to do so by clicking on something and then bringing it in and seeing how it's going to work, right? Now, for those who are wanting to create an icon, we can definitely do the same thing. And we're just going to go through like a quick icon thing that we're going to create here. So for example, let's say I've got something here. And then again, remember, it's telling me the size. So this is a 15 by 5. And if I'm going to have some pretty small icons, this might work. I'm going to add some rounded corners on this because I kind of want it to be like shoulders, but I don't want the bottom ones to be rounded at all because it's just going to be the top shoulder. So I'm going to probably change that to more like a 2 and this also to a 2. Now, again, my fill right now doesn't matter. Here's one. I am going to add a ellipse to it, so I'm going to hold my shift key so I can have that, and that I'm going to make it just a little bit larger, and because I want my icon to be pretty proportionate, so I've got 2 here, and that seems to be good. Now the other thing I can do is I can always grab both of them and then I can have them center, right, in case I didn't have my pixel grid. So this is one thing. Now what's nice is I can merge these by coming up here and doing the union. Again, I can change the color of it. So this might be like my little chat icon, just depending on what's going to be I'm going to be creating. Now, keeping in mind, I may have this icon, and again, some of my icons might have some other components or elements that go with it. So I may have to adjust it and do different things, right? So with this one, I am going to maybe add just a few little things. I'm going to put like here, and then I can also use my, well, I'll do this here in a second once I merge these. So I'm going to grab that, put it together, and then for this one, I think I'm going to do here. Or you know what, actually I'm going to make this probably like more of a sound. And so that should be fine. And then I can come over here, add that, and merge these together. And so here right now is my sound icon, and that might be something that, you know, I'm okay with, and I'm fine as far as it being an icon that I want to use. So again, I'm going to look at the size here. So I've got my icon. I'm going to use colors that are going to be complementary to whatever I'm designing for. When I make my hover states, right, for my icons, I want to make sure that whatever I create for a hover is going to be contrasting enough so it's not like a subtle. So for example, what I don't want is, let's say that, and I'm going to pull up my colors that I had previously before. Let's say I want to use this color. I'm going to do 01402E. Now, if I'm going to go from this color, and I'm just going to show you kind of as a quick guide, right? If I were to go from this color, and let's say I want to tell this one, like, hey, I'm just going to do like a gradient, a lighter shade. This isn't going to be good enough as far as what I'm trying to do. Meaning, I don't necessarily want to have such a light transition. I'd want it to be pretty drastic color change. So something that I could do is, instead of this, I'm going to do another one. I'm going to go ahead and change that color to definitely a more drastic F8B2A. So if it's going to be clicked on and hovered, you can see that for sure. 1, 2, here's my states, right? So these are going to be my two different states. Now, just to kind of give you an idea as you're thinking about your designs that you're going to be working on. Because I am just creating icons right now, I need to make sure I have all the pieces for my icons. So I think I want ultimately my icons to be round. So I'm going to have this, make sure I put this underneath. Oops. Let me redo this real quick. Make sure I have that. I'm going to slide this under, and then what I can do is I can grab these two, and then I can center them, and I can also center it here. So now I think I'm good. So ultimately, this is a 29 by 29. Again, dependent on the size of your icons, what they need to be, you'll adjust the size, right? Again, I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice as far as surface area that I'm covering. So I'm going to make this a little bit larger. And then for right now, I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to again make sure that I am centering the way that I need to. For this one, I am going to make sure that the background is pretty prominent. and then I think I did that backwards, BF8B 2A. So I'm okay with that. I am going to add a 1 pixel stroke to it, and then that's going to enlarge it, but I'm going to add it to the outside. And so that way it does go all the way around, and it's going to make it 30 by 30. So I've added the stroke to the outside of my icon, and so I've now changed it green. So being together, this is what my icon is going to look like. Keep in mind that the darker the colors, right, the harder it is going to be adjust. Now, again, this is something that I can at least see and I am able to work with. Now, I'm going to kind of go down with this here. I'm going to select all of it and I'm going to group it. And then this is going to be my chat icon, right? So with that, I can now position it and move it. What I do want to do from this point on is turn it into an actual component to where I can create different hover states for it, or at least one hover state for it. So from here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to tell it to create a component. Once that component is created, as you can see here, it turns it into a component there, right? Now, as I continue on, I can come over here to design mode. And then over here, what I'm going to do is go add a variant, meaning that is going to allow me to add that hover state. So I am going to add a variant. So that variant is going to be my chat hover, and I'm just going to call it H. The first one, as you can see here, they always call it default, which is the default, but for me, I like to change it, and I'm going to call it chat active, and this just my own personal preference. Doesn't mean you have to, but I like labeling things so I really understand where things are and what they are. So for my hover state, I am going to change how it looks, meaning I want to invert the colors. So for example, here, this is going to become green, and then this is going to become gold. Now I will need to go into my union here, and I'm going to change that to gold. So ideally, upon a hover, what's going to happen is it's going to change, right? It's going to go from one to the other. When I'm selected here, and then once I go into prototype mode, I'll be able to change that. So what I did first into design mode is I created a variant, which is also like another hover state. Then I will go to prototype, and then when I click on one, right? So when this is active, I can say upon hover, right? I want it to do something. So while hovering, I want it to change to, and then my chat hover. So I have those things there. I can now go to my assets, and I can look at what my components are that I created, and I can now pull that to anywhere that I need on my original document, right? So, let me not. I'm going to move it into the design just so that way we can see. And so if we preview this, you can now see that the hover part of it is working, right? And so when we do this, we're going to have an entire little menu of icons that are going to end up being what we call sticky. So, and we'll get to that right now. So I've created, at least in the design, an area where my icons are going to be, right? I've got this part. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to create a kind of basic shape that is going to be for my menu. I'm going to go back here so I can see what's happening here. Again, my menu might be on top of something else. It really just depends. I am going to kind of do a corner radius. So, oops, I actually have to be selected on it. Let me do the corner radius. Kind of adjust that. And then I'm going to bring this here, but I need to move my rectangle. And then this is where all of my things are going to be on, right? Now, what's nice about frames and sections, I can make those areas sticky, which that's one of the things I am going to do is I am going to create just kind of this little area right here. And there's a second frame, and that frame contains the chat and the rectangle, right? And so I can tell it to be in the prototype mode, to be fixed and to stay in place, right? So everything on this frame will be fixed and stay in place. But if we were to add a background, so let's say it is an image that is going to extend and be longer than our page, right? And so for example, what I'm going to do is I am going to grab a background image. I'm going to copy it and then I'm going to paste that here. Now, keep in mind, I have to bring that down into behind my rectangle, right? So here's my image that I'm working with, and then I'm going to resize it based off of what I need. So let's say this works right here. I'm going to just scooch that up a little bit. So now if I were to play this, right, you can see once I click, this part is working, but we want to make sure that it's now going to be sticky. So it does give us the kind of the preview right now. This part is working, and we want to make sure that we can now make our area sticky. So we're going to make sure that these are set up correctly within our area. So the first thing we want to do is we want to click on the MacBook Air one, and what we want to do is we want to make sure that it is fixed, like it does not necessarily move. Our image that we put into our background, when we go to prototype, we want it to scroll with the parent. And then this frame we want to make fixed and vertical. And that will give you the fixed sticky menu. And this is going to be in prototype. So when I go to preview this, what you'll see is now my menu starts to move. Okay. The last thing we can do is we can designate areas where things can jump to. So for example, remember that in design view, if we click on our image, or I'm sorry, on our MacBook Air, I'm going to unclip the content just for now because I want it to jump down to a specific area. And so for example, I am going to come here and I'm going to lower the opacity. And this is the area that I want it to jump to. Now I do need to move it into my MacBook Air area so that way it knows to go there. I am going to make this into a component. And what I want to do is I want to name my component. And I'm going to say design jump, right? The reason why I have that there is because when I go back to prototype mode, when I click on this button, I want it to jump to design and code. So I can go ahead and reclip my content, right? And I need to make sure I do it on the right layer. So I'm going to clip my content. In prototype mode, it's okay that it's not showing. what it'll do is here I can tell it that I want it to jump down further, right? So I want it to jump down here. So what I'm going to do is on click, I'm going to tell it to scroll to, and then from here to design jump, right? And then how do I want to do it? I want to animate it. Remember, it's 150, and then I can tell it to in and out, right? And then so now if I were to preview my prototype again, one, it scrolls, and then two, I can click and it goes to here. So now as I create more icons, it'll allow me to add more icons, right? So I'll have to design them. I'll need to go ahead and bring it over from my assets once they appear here. And so I can then drag them into my design, and then I can tell them how to jump to certain areas. I can also tell them to return to their position after they've clicked. So depending on what your assignments instructions are, you may have where you jump to several locations or you return back to the location. But that's how you would do that ultimately.